Long time no speak. Returning to the broadcast is Terry Wolf. I guess it's Terry Thursday. How you doing, Terry?
I'm doing good. It's good to be back. I loved when I can get on to TNT twice in 1 week and talk about what's going on because at least nowadays there's never a shortage. I'm sure you know that doing multiple every day, but it's like you go away for 2 days and there's a new batch of news. So I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's insane, and I guess we'll be talking about first thing we'll be talking about is the this idea of a second American Civil War. Baselit Analyzer was with me yesterday, and he does a lot of analysis of literature and film, and we talked a little bit about that. And he doesn't think. I think he said he doesn't quite think it's going to happen, but a lot of people are talking about this um, film titled Civil War that's coming out in April by Alex Garland, but a few people are discussing this film, and we're going to show a clip now. This film is it was put out on the Ides of March, right? March 15, 1997. It's titled The Second Civil War. It's a satirical black comedy film made for HBO. And it says the film set in the future US, in which immigration has rapidly increased, resulting in a fractured polyglot society. The mayor of LA speaks only Spanish. Rhode Island is populated mostly by Chinese Americans, and Alabama has a Sikh congressman. And politics have been openly reduced to a matter of catering to various ethnic groups for their votes, so on and so forth. And then it says that at one point, a major the war starts when the U.S. Army, the president decides to sic the U.S. Army on the Idaho National Guard. Before playing the clip, any thought on this, Terry?
I know I've seen people talk about this too online as predictive programming, as that somebody knew that this would happen in the future, almost like was an insider sort of view of it. So I'm curious. I haven't seen it myself, but I'm curious. The more you analyze it, does it seem like it's actually predicting, or is it just sort of making fun of issues of the day at that time that we're still dealing with those same issues?
Yeah, and I did obtain a copy of that 1997 film, so later this week I will be watching it. But let's go play that first clip.
We can see two busloads of orphans being unloaded the other side of the border here.
Pakistani orphans where, according to our information, busloads more are expected to arrive today.
Does anybody here speak English? Kill America! There's nothing left of it anyway!
They've blown up the Statue of Liberty.
I'm ordering you to remove this roadblock. My orders come from the president.
Snap has just learned that America is on the brink of civil war.
The federal troops have attacked! There is war! The Second Civil War has just broken out!
That is why I'm closing the damn border.
So that last clip made me think as well. The journalist, the propagandist journalist, says the Second Civil War is breaking out, and I'm just thinking about if they pull something like that in the future, because if something happens, it could just be a scuttle, right? It doesn't mean it's a civil war, and that'll be important for in the minds of people. If something
Right.
does happen at the Texas border, it could just be a little skirmish, and yeah. But if you get the media planting that idea, second civil war has begun, and it's like, okay, now we're off to the races. But do you have any other thoughts on that clip?
Well, the clip itself, it's very interesting to me. I wonder if that is how they promoted the movie or if that's somebody selectively editing just certain parts of it, because the trailer that I saw when I just looked it up, uh, it looked hilarious. It's a comedy. It's got a bunch of satire on the conversations that are happening between politicians about immigration, and they're just trying to use the whole immigration system to flood certain districts so that they can get votes in the in the electoral college. And so it's actually the movie is a commentary on how politicians use immigrants to to swing votes in different districts. And, they're making fun of all these racial stereotypes. And it's, there's a bunch of Saturday Night Live alumni in there. And it's a comedy. It looks actually pretty funny. But in that clip, it looks very dramatic, and they've got this serious music behind it. And I kind of feel like this is almost like somebody decided that because there was a movie called The Second Civil War, and we're concerned about that kind of thing now, they decided to just selectively edit it to make it look like this was predictive programming, when I'm pretty sure this was more of a reflection in the 90s already of how politicians use immigrants. And yes, it leads to stuff in the movie like blowing up this Statue of Liberty, which of course is related to the idea of immigration, has the famous inscription about the immigrants and the huddled masses and all this kind of stuff. And so it doesn't seem like that movie is predictive programming. It seems like people now are trying to predictively program that this was predictively programmed, to try to convince us that there was a plan for a civil war, which is kind of weird, because I think that the fear hype around a lot of these narratives, like you said, if the media suddenly weighed in and said we're looking at a civil war, well, that itself is what would make it a civil war. If everyone suddenly gets hyped up about it, like we have a story, maybe we can get to it after the headlines, but of Florida sending troops to Texas right now. So something's building up there. Is it PR or is it real?
Yeah, we'll find out on the other side of the headlines.
Here's some more potentially bad news.
TNT Radio News.
For TNT, this is James O'Neill. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is reportedly planning to dismiss the country's top general, Valery Zaluzhny, according to CNN and other news outlets. U.S. congressional Republicans have criticized Ukraine following the discovery of an embezzlement scheme by the country's security service, SBU, involving high-ranking defense ministry officials and a private arms manufacturer. The Oregon Supreme Court ruled on February 1st that 10 Republican senators cannot run for re-election.
Don't miss a thing. Be sure to download the TNT Radio app from either the Apple App Store or Google Play, so you can easily listen live to us anywhere, anytime. Available right now to download, keeping you up to speed on TNT Radio.
Before looking further on the current Second Civil War scenario, we're going to play the clip from the trailer. So of this new 2024 Civil War film that's coming out, I think in April, by Alex Garland, so we can sort of see the difference here. Let's play that clip.
19 states have seceded.
The United States Army ramps up activity.
The White House issued warnings to the Western forces as well as the Florida Alliance.
The three-term president assures the uprising will be dealt with swiftly.
Let me know if you want to try anything on.
Are you guys aware there's like a pretty huge civil war going on all across America?
We just try to stay out. With what we see on the news, seems like it's for the best.
Citizens of America, the so-called Western forces of Texas and California have suffered a very great defeat at the hands of the United States military.
Mr. President, do you regret the use of airstrikes against American citizens?
We're moving to D.C. today.
We need to go down there.
They shoot journalists on sight in the Capitol.
Every instinct in me says this is death.
Flooded.
Every time I survived the war zone, I thought I was sending a warning home. Don't do this. But here we are.
There's some kind of misunderstanding here. Look, we're American, okay?
Okay. What kind of American are you? You don't know?
The Western forces will reach the White House on July 4th.
Oh my God.
Get in the car! Get in the car! Move, move, move!
You're gonna hang back.
I'm not hanging back.
One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America.
All right, so I've got different scenarios here. Like I can honestly, Terry, I can feel it going either way. I would rather not there be a civil war, and so I could kind of, as you were alluding to earlier, maybe it's not going to happen, or maybe we're going to go into it, or maybe some third kind of scenario where we get a whole bunch of skirmishes where it's somewhere in between where we don't quite get to civil war, and things sort of um, are hashed out before that. And as you mentioned, there are some of the latest stories are that another state deployed. You mentioned Florida deployed National Guard, and then you get the guy heading the secessionist movement. He says that Texas is getting closer amid the border dispute, and then you've got Time saying no, Texas can't secede, and the border fight is about politics more than policy. Any further thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised that Florida, Ron DeSantis, he's planning to send 1,000 National Guard members. That's a lot. I mean, if it was 200, that would be a lot. 1,000 is theoretically supposed to be a deterrent against, federal forces, I would think. I mean, unless those are all supposed to be just to try to contain migrants, and it's that serious, I don't know. But yeah, he's making that move. That obviously looks strong on his part. It's showing the deeply conservative side of him. So the argument is that, and like this Time article says, that it's about politics and optics and appealing to your base, not that there's actually a serious threat of this going to a war or civil war or secession. It's more like these conservative governors want to flex that they're anti-democrat and they're anti-illegal immigration, and so they're making these moves. Although I will point out, there's also an article from this month about Biden supposedly saying that he would send F-15 fighter jets if there was a war with Texas, and this was supposedly a hot mic. Snopes did Snopes likes to debunk this kind of stuff. They did an article on it. They couldn't debunk it. All they could do was speculate that it was probably AI. And so here we go again with the deep fake side of things, where even if Joe Biden did get caught saying he would send F-15s to blow up, Texas National Guard, it's being dismissed as being AI. So I don't know if it is or not, but Snopes is speculating that it was, a deep fake, basically. So this is the level that is happening in reality. Is, we've got movies, we've got satire. They, of course, like to dramatize it and make it very sort of clear cut. Whereas here, we're in the age of AI and deep fakes and psychological warfare. And it seems like, I believe, if anything was going to happen there would be forces in place to coordinate a sort of rehearsed, like it's not going to happen organically. There would be a false flag, there would be an interruption, there would be some cell that would activate, and then suddenly now we have a civil war, quote unquote, but it's being led by federal, by the CIA basically to do some sort of coup internally or something like that. There's no way it happens organically. That's my conclusion in all this.
I think that is a strong point. I would definitely agree with you. And I'm just wondering, what if the feds start the second civil war and no one wants to come? Because I also had that thought where people these days, they're pretty comfy with their fast food and Netflix. And I'm just like wondering, that could be a problem for them too. Like people just like, nah, and then what? Nothing much going on there. So all right, let's move on then to the eugenics topic of with Fox Green, who's been on my show and on other people's shows here in TNT, and it talks about he talks about the MAID program in Canada, and I think it's a powerful clip, and I fully agree with him. So we're going to play part of that clip right now.
That's a choice that we make as a society, right? This is a choice that we make as a society to say that we want to make it easier for people to kill themselves than to live. This is like the thing that we base our society on, right? Is whether we make it easier for people to live or people to die. And right now we live in a sick society that makes it easier for people that say, you know what? The choice to die is easier than the choice to live. This is the failing of our society, and this is what needs to be rectified. This is a Nazi position. This isn't like I'm a little leftist calling somebody a fascist because they're mean and they're bigoted and no, this is literally Nazi policy. This is it. Medically assisted deaths could save millions in healthcare spending. That is a Nazi policy. This is the useless eaters policy. The same justification that they used to start killing people based on eugenics and people who were not fit to breed. They had to get rid of the people who consumed too much and cost too much money to keep around. The people who are a supposed drag on society. This is literally Nazi policy. So this guy, he says, in a resource limited healthcare system, anytime we roll out a large intervention, there has to be a certain amount of planning and preparation, and cost has to be part of that discussion. It's just the reality of working in a system of finite resources. Oh, have you guys heard that before? This idea that we live on a planet with finite resources? That sounds so familiar to me. I feel like I keep hearing that over and fucking over again.
All right, so that was Fox Green, and I think he made a strong point. And I like how, I like the term that he used, that it's fascist and Nazi. And I think that's more accurate even than communist. And some really big accounts on Twitter who do really good work have made the point that the left and the Democrats get more angry when you call them fascist. When you call them communist, they don't care. And I think this is true. That really gets under their skin more. And so let's call the left fascist Nazis, because that's what they call us to try to get under our skin, right? But this MAID program, and I've seen other reports as well. Some Canadians, Terry, were recently making videos warning, saying, make a lot of noise about this now, because if you don't, your government's going to then create MAID in their in your country. Your further thoughts on this clip?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this since the beginning. I've been all over this. I think we've even talked about the possibility that because mental health is one of the things they look for in this suicide program, and once you're determined to be, a danger to yourself or mentally unwell, they could basically take an innocent, healthy person, call them crazy, and then kill them. I mean, it could be a form of dissident erasure if they really wanted to, if they kept pushing it. So this is, that's a slippery slope fallacy maybe, but it's also, nobody would have guessed we would have gotten this far unless you were willing to look into how dark these people are. But I would say in terms of the fascist and Nazi thing, you really have to understand that the Nazis didn't invent any of that. They were taking from British and American ideologies that existed before them. Here's a quote from George Bernard Shaw. Maybe I won't read the whole thing, but he says, I don't want to punish anybody, but there are an extraordinary number of people who I want to kill. Not any kind of unkind or personal spirit, but it must be evident to all of you. You must all know half a dozen people at least who are of no use in this world, who are more trouble than they are worth. And I think it would be a good thing to make everybody come before a properly appointed board, just as he might come before income tax commissioners, and say every 5 or every 7 years, just put them there and say, sir or madam, now will you be kind enough to justify your existence? And there's a little bit more to the quote yet, but this is a British, intellectual, in some sense being darkly satirical, but America was doing actual eugenics before the Nazis. The Nazis took that from Americans. And so this is a very American and Atlantic sort of Milner group, Rhodes Society sort of concept. And if it comes back now, it's actually just sort of a callback to the eugenics technocratic sort of movement that predates even the Nazis. And so to me, that's even more chilling because it means that it's been around the whole time, and it could very well happen again, except we would do it under a different style, a more politically correct style than the Nazis, who were openly about a master race and trying to weed out the undesirables in their society. We tend to dress things up as more of a compassionate, liberal idea somehow.
Yeah, and you are correct. I've discussed this before. It's, when you say Nazi eugenics, people get it, but if we go back to the further history, because the British American elite backed the Nazis, and so what phrase do we have there that people would understand? It was the Rockefeller, Carnegie, and those types of folks that were doing this stuff and backing. First, doing it in the U.S., like the first gas chamber in the U.S. Edwin Black documents how governors in the U.S. were preparing to open up in the early 1900s camps to send people to their death in America who were undesirables, disabled people. And so, yeah, that's a tough one. We do have one more clip that deals with these issues, but we'll play it right when we come back.
Today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Don't forget to check out Terry's work at wolfpox.com. You got his books there, his socials. Remember, again, he was huge on TikTok, seen by millions, in his Substack, winterchristian.substack.com. And we have this clip as well. This is out of Britain now. And it just goes back to what you were saying, Terry, that this elite, Malthusian eugenicist world view is really emanating out of the English-speaking world, particularly Britain, and that the fact that we're having this discourse in the Commonwealth, Canada, U.S., Australia, New Zealand type countries, UK, right? That this really seems like this is the source, and so this guy's talking about having children. And then later someone makes the point, which is an excellent point, that wealthy people who don't have any children also have a far bigger carbon footprint because they're eating more expensive foods and buying multiple cars and going on vacations. They could have a larger footprint than, a Mexican family of 5 or 6, who are eating, living a frugal lifestyle. And it logically, it doesn't even make sense what he's saying, but let's play this the clip of this guy saying not to make babies.
I just want to draw a circle, if I like. So I warned the producer I was going to do this. So I'm 64 years of age. That circle represents all of the wildlife that was on the planet when I was born, just 64 years ago. And in that time, with the 8 billion of us that are now there, with all the food, wood, transport, housing that we have to provide for them, we have destroyed 70% of nature.
And what would you say?
In one generation. And I just think, Eamon, there's a moral issue here. How can we pass that on to the next generation?
Okay, I get that. But say you live in, Milton Keynes, are watching us this morning, whatever. Why would that be your responsibility? Are you contributing to that?
Every single child in an industrial country like ours is around 500 tons of carbon over their lifetime. That's equivalent of 1,000 years of electricity for a household. So each child has an impact. And what we're saying is 1 is great, 2 is plenty, and 3 is selfish.
Gosh, OK, well, Nicole, how do you feel about those kinds of words? Lots of parents don't actually plan to have 3 and a third one comes along. Does it suddenly make people almost feel some sort of moral dilemma for their own contraceptive failings. It just enters a whole new sort of moral maze, doesn't it, if you have language like that?
I'll be honest, I feel quite angry by that kind of language. As one of four, for me, no, I'm sorry. We've got a lovely family, and the idea of that 3 is selfish is just.
But what about this? What about the comments Donica was making there about the destruction of our wildlife in one generation as a consequence of a huge rise in our population? That's partly. Did you say you're one of 4? Your mum's
involved. Absolutely. But then actually, if I've got friends that don't have children and their lifestyle is very, very different to our lifestyle. So we have children and we're kind of in the same sort of area. We don't really go on many holidays. We don't really do much. Whereas those that don't tend to have children have got more money. So they've got more free money. So they tend to have more holidays. And their carbon footprint could be higher in other ways. So
I think that's a very, very good point, Nicole. I just want to get Donica's opinion on the point that Nicole's making there.
Well, this story came from a family that wrote in the Daily Mail that she's having 3 kids, and she was saying they fly every year to Canada. So every extra child is 2.6 tons a flight. So that one child taking one flight for every year will be the equivalent of 10 houses worth of electricity. You turn off everything in a house for 10 years for that one flight for that child.
But Donica, just to say, have fewer children doesn't mean that the people who don't have kids aren't committing climate crimes. A lot of people I know that don't have kids have 1 or more dogs, and the carbon footprint of a dog, for example, is, I believe, worse than a 4x4 Range Rover.
Don't be stupid.
I
highest it.
Well, because Donica's probably more equipped to explain that, but I believe it's got a high carbon footprint.
One of the problems with large dogs is that they eat a lot of meat, and meat has got very high carbon footprint.
Even the fact that GB News is playing into the game and using words like climate, what did she say? Climate crimes, like that's ridiculous. And the fact that we're now calculating the value of a human being and in this way. And he said having a third kid is selfish, and I've been considering very strongly I want to have a third kid. And now I think I'm going to do it. And then, I'm imagining my third kid when they get older, they'll say, why'd you decide to have me? And I literally would say, because Don McCarthy said it would be selfish to have you. And I said, you can thank Don McCarthy for your existence. Your further thoughts, Terry?
If this doesn't drive home the point for people, I don't know what would. They are openly talking about children being evil. It is original sin. It is talking about in terms of criminality. This is the rhetoric of a sociopathic, anti-human death cult that is gearing up in some way, on some level, to euthanize, to sterilize, to try to get you to kill your own species. They are, it is just the rhetoric of demons. What other being would just hate humanity so much that they want to eliminate innocent children? And everything they're saying scientifically is backwards too. If you have more people, they can be more productive. They can cultivate the land better. They can manage things better. If they're taking care of property, having a huge farm with 20 kids would be an amazing thing. And carbon is not a pollutant. It's actually good for the environment. So everything they're saying is actually upside down world to justify their goal, which is depopulation. It's not like they started with proper science and then this is the logical conclusion they've reached. They started with population control. They've inverted the science to try to make it work. And now they're pushing this legal/religious framework of a sin of having children and being selfish. We joked about that, about how having kids would be considered, having human rights at all is considered to be selfish. It would be, if you want to be a good citizen, you should be a slave, you should eat worms, and you should, have a very short life and die. That's their idea of humanity. Meanwhile, of course, like you said, they're complete hypocrites. They enjoy all the luxuries they want. And they do just waste and spend and send humans to go kill each other overseas. It's a nightmare that they're creating in the name of the green world order, really, in the name of Earth worship.
And what I don't understand is how the everyday people around us, like they don't understand this, or it just goes right over their heads. Just the message I got during the show from some friends here in Mexico, parents here in Mexico. They sent a photo of the Agenda 2030, the SDGs. It literally says Agenda 2030. It's got the SDGs, and they said, and they couldn't believe it. So it's a Mexican mother here in Mexico says, I just saw the Agenda 2030, the SDG circle, colorful rainbow circle at this education center here in Guadalajara in Mexico. And she was saying that she herself says, I can't understand the parents. Like she says that I know some people that go there, they take their children there. And I'm like, they take them to a school that's, full on SDG 2030. And yeah, I just don't understand that, Terry. And we were going to discuss your Substack, but we'll get to that, I think, next week on Theosophy. But, any thought on that? But and also maybe this other story that I mentioned, Bloomberg reports today that U.S. cattle herd shrinks to 73-year low. And so basically they're saying here, oof, the Bloomberg article froze. But basically they were saying the gist is that the price of the meat is going to stay high, less affordable for people, and the profit for the meat processors is going to keep going down. So I think over time lead to meat processors going out of business. That I think that's the same theme as what we've been discussing. No,
World War III is the destruction of your own country by your own elites, and it is happening right now. They want to kill you. They want to kill your families. They want to destroy farmers, especially because they are self-sufficient. They create an abundance. It proves their entire theory wrong, that people are destructive and that they just consume. Actually, no, people are productive, especially when they work together and when they have a pro-human attitude. And I don't blame people for not getting this because on some level, it's so evil that it's hard to comprehend. It's so dark that the idea, you could see it in those news broadcasters saying, the women were immediately, this just sounds awful. This sounds evil. How could you say something like that? That's a genuine human reaction. And they're professionals who are trying to indulge this expert. And even on air, they have to say that this is just awful. It makes their stomach wrench, just thinking of this expert saying that we're selfish for wanting to have kids instead of celebrating life. And so there's a cognitive dissonance element to this where they bash you over the head with guilt and fake statistics, fake science. And then next thing you know, people are, God forbid, having abortions or whatever they're doing just to try to keep this population low while they flood your country with immigrants.
Climate crimes? No, I would call climate changeism crimes against humanity. All right, Terry, we didn't get to it, but you just dropped a new fantastic Substack. We'll talk about it next week, but people can go to winterchristian.substack.com, wolfpox.com, find your books as well. So have a great weekend, Terry.
Thanks.